Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jaden and I am a King James Bible believing street preacher based in New York City. And today's video is going to be on where video games steal from the Bible. And this is going to be on a game called Persona 3. Now, Persona is a spin-off of the series I did on the first one of this series. And Persona is a bit more particular than that one. Persona is way more popular than that one. It's actually one of the most popular games. And since they re-released the third game, which is very old. I figured I would do one on that since that was one of my most played games. Now, Persona 3, it is another Japanese RPG, and the themes of this game all have to do with the meaning of life and death. Now, this game, because it's a spin-off of the last game, imagery-wise, steals a lot from the Bible. So instead of focusing on that, I'm going to give you more specifics on other things, right? All right, so let's just talk about the general premise of the game. The premise of the game is that you are an orphan child, and this child, he is a high school student. He goes to this school university dorm, and what he ends up finding out is that in every hour of the day, in all 24 hours of the day, there's an extra hour, and in that hour, that's when all the demons and their principalities and stuff make themselves visible, and then they do whatever they do to the humans, right? And in the game, the only way to fight off these monsters is you have to use a persona. Now, what is a persona? A persona is the inner incarnation of that person's personality, and it has to be evoked. So in this particular game, the way that the person evokes their persona is they have to use a gun called an evoker. And in the series, the person puts the gun to their head and they shoot it. And when they shoot themselves in the head, the persona comes out, and then they are able to use like magical powers to basically fight off these demons. Now, every character has a persona that's tied to their personality. And in the series, pretty much every person's persona is tied to some Greek or Roman god. Now, in the case of the protagonist, he's a wild card, so he can use any persona. But the main one that he's given for his personality is Orpheus. Now, if you know the story of Orpheus, you already probably get where I'm getting at. But we'll get to that in a minute. Now, as you go through the story, you start fighting off all these different special demons, and you're basically climbing this tower called Tartarus. Now, in Greek mythology, it's the pit that goes down because they got to steal from the Bible. And in Tartarus, in Greek mythology, that's where the souls of the lost are judged on Judgment Day. They get judged in Tartarus. Now, in Greek mythology, that's in the bottom of the earth. Listen, in the bottom of the earth, where did Jesus go? Right? Like, come on, man. Now, in this game, though, they have Tartarus as a tower, and uh, the whole story, they're fighting and fighting these demons. But then the plot twist is that they find out that actually they shouldn't have defeated those demons because those demons were holding back a worse demon from coming. And that demon is the final boss named Nyx. Nyx is death incarnate. And it turns out that there's actually no way to defeat Nyx because you can't kill death. By the way, Nyx is at the top of this tower. So you have this tower, which is just a ripoff of the Tower of Babel. And at the top, you meet an angelic demon god being like what the people were doing in Genesis. And then you find out you can't even beat this being because this being is death incarnate. And what the protagonist ends up doing is he gives his life for the sake of the world, except he doesn't actually defeat Nyx. He just seals Nyx off for some intermittent amount of time, and we don't know if Nyx will ever break the seal and come out again. And the reason why they say that is because in the story, the idea is that the reason why Nyx came in the first place is because the humans wanted Nyx to come down because they wanted to seek death and destruction. Well, let me ask you a question. Doesn't that sound exactly like the Bible? Bible says, doesn't the Bible say, all they that hate me love death? So the whole story of the game is that the reason Nyx came wasn't because Nyx was a bad guy, but because Nyx was just giving the humans what they wanted. Humans wanted death, stuff like that. All right, now let's go through a couple more details. So the first thing is Let's look at the protagonist, his persona, Orpheus. Now, Orpheus, the story in Greek mythology is that Orpheus went down. He was a good singer. By the way, he's a good singer. Who else is a good singer? Yeah, the devil. Orpheus went down into Hades, which is just hell, but he went down into Hades and he convinced Persephone and Hades with his good singing to let him go and try to get back his wife because his wife died, his wife Eurydice. He went down there to try to get his wife, but Hades told him, "All right, well, when you leave, uh, don't look back because if you look back, she'll get snatched back into the underworld." So Orpheus keeps going forward and forward and forward, but then eventually he turns back and oh, whoop de doo. He shouldn't have done that because now his wife is gone forever. Let me ask you something. Who did they steal that from? The Greeks stole everything they got from the Bible. Yeah, that's Lot. That's Lot and his wife. Except in this story, it's a corrupted version. Orpheus looked back, but in the Lot story, it's the wife that looks back. Now, the reason why that's relevant is because in the story of Persona, the whole problem with the protagonist is that he's like traumatized by something that happened in his life, and he's always constantly looking back to find out what happened to him. And then you end up finding out later in the story that, well, you know, there was a battle between two other beings, and then one of those beings tried to defeat the other demon, and being number A took her enemy, being number B, and put that and sealed him inside this poor orphan kid. So now this child, listen to this, this child is this is so ridiculous. This protagonist child has death living inside of him in the person of Thanatos. But then later in the story, Thanatos is released from the child and is supernaturally conceived as a person who is death incarnate. What? Dude, that's just a counterfeit version of the virgin birth, but for the Antichrist. It's the same premise. What? All right. Now let's go to another thing about this game that they just rip off the Bible. So there's a character in the game named Junpei. There's another person, the woman, her name is Chidori. Now Chidori has a skill that she can bring things back to life, but the caveat is that it takes some of her own life force in order to bring that thing back to life. So there's a part in the story where Junpei gets killed, like just straight killed, and then Chidori, because she loved him, she decided she was going to resurrect him. And when she does, she ends up paying the price and then she dies. Now, when she gave her life force to resurrect him from the dead, she ends up living inside of him as an energy force. And Junpei gains an ability in the game. Guess what it's called? The Spring of Life. And you know what it does? The ability gives the person active healing and it gives him active resurrection and regeneration. Dude, are you serious? That's just a counterfeit of Jesus. Isn't Jesus called the fountain of living waters? Hmm. All right, now here's the worst one. So at the end of the game, the protagonist gains an ultimate persona. And the ultimate persona, it's a changed version of Orpheus. And I'm gonna put the picture on the screen. You would not believe what this persona is called. It's called Messiah. And it has all the imagery of the crucifixion there. And you couldn't miss it unless you were like blind both ways, man. So now, like I said, at the end of the game, the protagonist, he ends up dying for everybody in the world, and then he seals off Nick's death so that death can't corrode the humanity anymore. Except he doesn't. Guess what the protagonist becomes? He becomes a golden door, a seal to block off Nyx from coming into the universe. Are you serious? Seriously? Jesus says, "I am the door," but he's the door of life. In this case, this person, he gave himself. Look how nihilistic this game is. He gives himself for the life of the world, so that the world doesn't get killed by Nyx anymore, the harbinger. Except that he doesn't, because Nyx might break through the seal one day and get through. So it was all meaningless anyway. Now the funniest thing is that Nyx is another harbinger of death. But then in the post game of this Persona 3, the last boss is Erebus. Erebus is another incarnate of death who tries to open the seal so that he can let Nyx out and give humanity what they really want. Humanity really wants death and this and that. Dude, come on. All right, so I'll close it out there. Persona 3, This game, I played this game like 5 or 6 something times growing up, and I played the re-releases before I got saved. It was cool when I was lost, but the themes are just anti-God, and they're just Greek mythos nonsense. So, I'll just close it out there. Pray you got a blessing from the video. God bless.